Our stories are very personal, and most of us will go through life holding on to our story. It lives within, and maybe at the end of our life, we'll have an obituary, a couple sentences that somebody else writes to encapsulate the life that we lived and what we stood for. But what can happen when we take our very personal story, when we name it, when we claim it, when we externalize it and are bared witness, owning our story, sharing our story becomes part of the collective narrative. It's still very personal, but now it becomes transpersonal. And the wisdom and the medicine that lives in every line of our story becomes wisdom and medicine for somebody else who's maybe hearing it for the first time and tapping deeper into that sense of connection with their own story. Welcome to the Peaceful Pop-Up Podcast. I'm Ravi, your host. Together, we'll slow down, breathe, and explore grounded fatherhood with greater peace and presence. I'm grateful you're here. Enjoy the show. Welcome to the Peaceful Papa Podcast. I'm your host, Ravi, and today I have a very special guest, myself. I also have my story. My story is written on a scroll in this mysterious envelope. So we'll have a chance today to dive deep into the topic of story. I'm also going to share a bit more about my personal story. Now, first, I want to start the way that I start all of my episodes. If I had a guest here, I would ask them to do an exercise called Head, Heart, Hara. And so I will, just in the interest of really checking in with myself and sharing that part of me in this moment, I'll go through the exercise myself. So in the head is where all of the facts about Ravi live. This is where I'm going to speak some of the basics. If I was at a networking event, maybe this is how I would show up. Okay, so hand on my head, and I'm going to speak from that place. My name is Ravi Rothenberg, born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Two parents, Larry and Marla. I have two younger sisters. I played a lot of soccer growing up. I went to school at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis. I studied journalism and business. I've lived abroad. I've been in Colorado for just over 11 years. I have a partner. We're not legally married, but I often call her my wife. I have two children. I have a dog. And this is episode number 7 of the Peaceful Papa Podcast. From there, I'm going to drop down into my chest. And from my heart, I'm going to speak how I feel in this moment. I feel really inspired. I feel energized. I feel a little bit nervous. It's my first solo episode. I feel a sense of awe and wonder. Even driving in this morning into Boulder, I caught an amazing view of the full moon rising above the mountains. And like the sun was hitting the moon and the sun was hitting these like snow-capped mountains. It was one of the most glorious views I've ever seen. I feel aligned and connected and just deeply grateful for just my health and the health of my family, and for being able to share and connect on a platform like this. Dropping from the feeling space into the space just below my navel, my Hara, my energetic center. And from this place, I'm going to speak really what I want. And so I tend to close my eyes and drop into that place. What do I want? I want my story to inspire others. I want the collective to wake up and have deeper, more meaningful conversations. I want I want it all to work out. I want my kids to be happy and healthy and expressed and living in a place where others around them are also happy and healthy and expressed. I want the world to be a more compassionate place. I want there to be less suffering. I want the kindness and benevolence that I feel to ripple outward. And I want time to slow down. All right. Thanks for playing. Thanks for listening. Again, head, heart, hara for me has been such a transformational practice and tool for awareness. I think even when I'm in social situations, I can really feel when someone is speaking from their head. They're really just kind of heady, speaking a lot of factual information. Um, and I often crave and desire for the journey from head down into heart. And then heart is a nice place, the feeling space, but beyond that, like, ooh, if we can drop into what we really want at the core of our being, that's where real intimacy and vulnerability and connection is possible. So that's always the invitation, is to cultivate the awareness. Am I speaking from my head? Am I speaking from my heart and my feelings? And can I give myself permission to really allow myself to be seen and speak from the core of my being in my hara? As I mentioned, today's solo episode, and what I really want to share is about this whole theme of story. We all have one. It's often a narrative that is running our lives, um, often unconscious. It's kind of dwelling beneath our conscious mind. Our story is this collection of experiences. Often, a lot of them are coming from childhood, from our parents, from our family of origin, from our culture, our conditioning. And so these are the stories that we are really operating through. It's like our operating system that if we don't look at them, if we don't really touch and get close with the story that's running our lives, it's doing exactly that. It is running our lives. For some people, it is ruining their lives. They're like, man, my life is so hard. I'm just always in conflict. I don't feel like I have direction. And so what I would say to that is like, well, how close are you to your story? And oftentimes when we're so fixated and attached on who we are from a place of conditioning, there really isn't room for freedom or expression and expansion and creativity. And so we're doing life the way that we should be doing it, or that we think we're supposed to be doing it. And oftentimes we run into challenges. But something really amazing starts to happen when you turn your awareness inward and get curious about your story. There aren't so many spaces to do this, even in my personal journey. It took me until I was in my 20s and life was really challenging, where I first entered therapy. And therapy was this first time where I had an opportunity to look inward. Um, I didn't stay in therapy so long, but it gave me enough tools and awareness and a curiosity to start orienting my awareness to a more inward place. As fathers, as men, there's a lot of story that we bring into the family system that we are creating. And that's why I think it's so important that we hit the pause button, zoom out, and start really looking with curiosity and also compassion. Gabor Mate talks about compassionate inquiry. And I think that's so important that as you start to inquire about who am I, how did I become this way, to have a really strong connection to compassion. Um, Otherwise, we can be really critical, really hard on ourselves as we start to look within. So that's my first prompt for you is as you're listening, um, first question is, what is my relationship with my own story? And just take a moment to be with that. If you're driving, take a breath. If you're able to sit down and press pause and journal, what is my relationship with my own story? I think that can be a really interesting starting point to see and kind of assess and take inventory of like, where am I in terms of the work that I've done around getting curious of how I am the way that I am. So, what is my relationship with my own story? There's something unique that happens when we get clear on some of the milestones that happened to us. What was my first memory? Um, what what was the state of the world as I was being birthed into it and raised as a child? And how were my parents relating? And what was the energetics of my household growing up? There's so many clues and so much information that can inform us on how we were shaped to be who we are and how we are. And so when we get curious about our own story, that awareness then gives us permission to be the authors of our story moving forward. And as we birth children into the world, as we become the pillars of our family, um, unconsciously, if we're not paying attention, we're likely repeating the narrative, repeating the stories that we grew up with, that we became adults with. Um, and in some cases, that's fine. And in other cases, maybe we're repeating patterns that are not things that we would like to be passing along. And so, with the awareness of our story, we can start to consciously make decisions and be the authors and the creators of our life. There's one of my guests in a previous episode, he shared about how the void creates what we value. So if there was a void of connection in your household growing up, and you've done a lifetime of work, you may arrive at this place that, like, wow, because of that void, I really value connection. I am going to consciously create opportunities for me to connect with my spouse or my kids or with my community. Gone unchecked, gone unwitnessed, and unseen, that void might just become something that we perpetuate, and that there's this hole. And so, in that place of that feeling of emptiness, that void within, then we're unconsciously looking for ways to fill the void, right? So maybe it's drugs or alcohol or just communities and connections that really don't serve us, and that again perpetuate this void. And then our children feel that from us. The void that we experience is what we pass along. And so they either repeat that cycle, or there's some wounding there that now our children are the ones carrying the torch of like, okay, well, dad didn't want to fix that. Dad wasn't in a place to fix that. So I'm going to take this torch, and that's going to be my life's mission. So that's where it gets really interesting. The more you witness your own story, get curious, identify the areas where there was lack or a void. And then when you consciously fill in those blanks and you're living on purpose, there can be just major shifts in this like intergenerational cycle that you could be the cycle breaker, the one who's like, oh, I'm going to do this different. And that's such a powerful part of owning your story. There's a lot of cliches that we can drop into. One that I really like too is that your mess becomes your message. So if you are in a place of just overwhelm, or in life where you're like at a crossroads and you're doing what you should be doing and you have the corporate job, or just there's a lack of fulfillment, there's a chance that you haven't gotten close to your mess yet. And so when it comes to living on purpose, the message that wants to come through, if you want it to come through from a really authentic place, it's really empowering to get close with and understand your mess, so that you can own it, you can transmute it, and let it move through you in a more authentic, aligned, and ultimately inspiring way, so that your mess becomes your message, and the communities and the people that have also experienced that same thing or a similar version of it, they can find you, because all of a sudden you're speaking a language that speaks exactly to the hurt or the pain that they've been experiencing, and they're like, oh, I thought I was so unique, I thought I was the only one going through this. But when you speak truth to your mess, it becomes your message, and inspires a lot of people potentially. I had the privilege this past weekend of participating in an experience. Um, in the last 6 years, since I've really been on my own path of awakening uh, and consciously excavating who I am and how I am, I've really found that retreats, workshops, like group experiences that are masterfully facilitated, and really held and created with care and devotion and safety, these are my favorite places to dwell and to spend my time. Um, Life is busy. I can't spend all of my days away in retreat with groups doing transformational work. But when I can, it's something that I really value. And if you haven't experienced that work, that's an invitation. Please, like, lean in. If you're like, yeah, I haven't done the inner work. I don't want to go to therapy. I don't have a coach. I haven't been in a group setting like that really ever. This is my invitation. Like, lean in. And this is what I'm creating too. I have a group men's program starting in a couple weeks on October 27th called The Fourth Quarter. And it's really an opportunity to go deep with a group of men through the end of the year, and getting clear and committing to peace, to presence, to purpose, to power, and ultimately to prosperity. So just a small plug for what I'm birthing, because I so value these spaces, and they're really rare. They're out there, but you have to find them, and oftentimes finding a facilitator or a space that you feel a sense of connection and trust with can be hard to find. So if you're feeling resonance of like, oh, I wanna go deeper with this, like, please reach out. Um, so this past weekend, had the privilege of participating in a 3-day journey with 12 other people. And it was called the Reselfing, the Mythos Experience. Now, the technology that they use, and when I say technology, I mean like the methodology, the process, was intentionally simple. They created a space where the individuals going through the journey would have an opportunity to share our stories. What was so important too in the way that they did it was that as we got to share our stories, there was no coaching, no fixing, no helping, no advice giving. It was really just an open opportunity to share story and to be fully witnessed. And we were in small groups, and really the cohorts that we were in, our group members, their sole responsibility was to listen fully, to be there, to witness, to just energetically hold space for the person sharing their story. And when you have the opportunity to unapologetically, unfiltered, just share, something really magical happens. A lot of the burdens that we carry become these breadcrumbs. Again, if when we have the time to like really go chronologically through our life to share our story, burdens become breadcrumbs, and then those breadcrumbs start to lead you down this path of like, oh, there's actually a trail here. There are these themes and narratives that maybe have been repeating. Or when I am able to share my story, I can even witness my own story and see how, oh, that's the thing that I keep doing, or I've repeated this cycle, or wow, yeah, everything really changed for me when this happened. And so it's a really beautiful and rare opportunity to bear witness to your own story. Again, in a moment, I have my story lives, at least a summary of it lives in this envelope. And so it feels like an edge, but also like I've owned my story recently, and from that place, I'm excited to share it externally. I remember a few years back when I wrote my book. It's called Ready to Rise: How to Find Your Path to Peace and Purpose. And as I was in the process of writing it, my uh, my editing team was like, "Hey, your chapter 2, like, who am I to lead you down a journey of peace and purpose?" This very autobiographical chapter. The first version of it was like 32 pages long. 32 pages. I really clearly went deep into a process of like, who am I? And who am I to lead and guide others down this path? And it was very cathartic. In hindsight, it must have been very cathartic for me to write 32 pages of my story. But that is like a a large fraction of the book in itself. And so I needed to edit that down. So after like a first round of edits, 32 pages, I believe I cut it in half to like 15. And the editor was still like, yeah, thank you for cutting that in half, but there's still a lot there. Okay, fine. So 15 pages, I think in the end, it's like 8 or 10 pages. And that still felt incomplete, but I can also accept the fact that I don't need to pour my life story into proving and validating and showing that I'm worthy to guide somebody down a path of peace and purpose. But it was a brilliant exercise of just getting it out. I think here in front of me too is my journal, and over the last number of years, I've really committed to a journaling practice. I'm not always journaling every morning, but when there is something moving through me, I really am inspired to reach for pen and paper, because as I'm journaling, I'm telling my story to myself, and then by doing that, it creates spaciousness for me to then be the author of my life. And so again, as you're taking this in, that's my second prompt for you is, in addition to, what's my relationship to my own story, this question is like, have I carved out time to get close to my own story? And that can be a yes or a no answer. And if the answer is no, my invitation is to you is to like, is there a curiosity there? Is there an intrigue of like, okay, what would it look like to dive deeper into my own story? Ultimately, there's a great mystery. There's this really beautiful tapestry that when you get close to your story, you can really own it. And for me, there's like so much beauty and awe of like, wow, I did all of that. Like, I'm so resilient and adaptable and capable. So from that place too, it can instill some really deep confidence in your ability to continue to be the author of your story. Our stories also are a really amazing place for creating connection and intimacy. And so you even like thinking about your partner, your spouse, your wife, your kids, if they're a little bit older, this can be a great starting point for a really meaningful conversation. And my recommendation is, should you muster the courage to initiate those conversations, like really create the conditions for yourself or for others to thrive in that space. Like, give it space. Don't give it like, okay, you've got 10 minutes right now. What's your life story? Like, tell me. So yeah, really set up the conditions with intention so that somebody can give you a spacious transmission of who they are. All right, I think it's time. I'm going to go ahead and open my envelope here. Again, I had the privilege of going through a 3-day experience that was all around storytelling, and the facilitators, what they did was they took our much longer story, and using a technology, they helped us to refine it down into about 750 words. They took it a step further, and they put our stories on these beautiful scrolls. So I'm going to open my scroll. I've only read my story aloud twice since receiving it. And so part of me sharing it here on this podcast is both an opportunity to embody it, to really own my story. And also it's so fresh from this weekend experience that it's, for me, this is a form of integration, of allowing it to move through me again, and to be seen, to be witnessed by a much larger audience, to really solidify that this is my story. Now, one caveat too is that this is one version of my story. If I told my story again, it probably wouldn't sound exactly like this. And so there's a refinement that happens over time. And so oftentimes when we first dive into our story, there can be some density, there can be some heaviness or sadness that's there. And it's important to get close to that, to be with that, to create space within ourselves for the tragedies, but then also to own them. And yeah, our mess becomes our message, and it becomes very empowering to then find the triumphs and the ways that we were adaptable and resilient, and how much we've grown in a lifetime. Are you ready? Am I ready? You ready, Yoad? All right. All right. Ravi, the flame between worlds. In the beginning, before names and noise, there was a spark. A boy born between light and shadow. His mother trembled as he was lifted into the world, his first breath echoing through a lineage of gamblers, dreamers, and unspoken prayers. The hush before the storm. They called him Jordan Shane Rothenberg. But long before he knew his name, destiny whispered another. Ravi, the flame between worlds. His first companion was a golden retriever named Winnie, fur like sunlight made into flesh. And together they padded through Milwaukee, Wisconsin winters, guardian and child learning trust in a cold world. When Winnie passed, the boy felt the first wound of impermanence, a sacred lesson wrapped in loss. Yet soon came Rusty, another golden flame, proof that endings were only transformations wearing sorrow's mask. He grew between Jewish tradition and Midwestern grit, learning the shimmer of his grandfather's grace and the ache of his father's debts. Two worlds battled in his blood, chaos and order, abundance and lack. He sought balance through motion, soccer, running, snowboarding, leaping, breaking bones, and returning stronger. Each fracture was initiation, each cast a cocoon for resilience. Beneath laughter and games, he felt the undercurrent, the ache of secrecy, the mysterious pouch on the sink, the whispers of addiction. He realized that adults too could be lost children. So he became the watcher, noticing every car, every light, every shift in the wind. His eyes were radar for truth. High school brought triumph and tragedy intertwined. Love bloomed, bones broke, and the law caught him twice in its teeth. Freedom carried consequence. Yet even as authority tried to brand him, his loyalty lay elsewhere. To wonder, to the untamed, to the pulse beneath it all. When his father said, "Take the job, it's 50 grand," another voice whispered, "Not all gold glitters." He followed the map of money for a time, working in offices, masking his sensitivity in professionalism. But the quiet fire refused to die. When his mother's addiction deepened, he entered therapy, breaking open a lineage of silence. And when he could bear no more, he did what all heroes must. He left the known world. With one decision, he drove west toward the mountains, seeking altitude for his soul. Boulder was the threshold, the temple between earth and sky. There he broke again, not a bone, but identity. His knee shattered against a tree, and the mountain whispered, "Stillness is strength." Yoga, breath, and humility became his new language of rebirth. He rose not as a man chasing success, but as one building sacred community. Startup weekends became his pilgrimages, gathering where strangers became allies and ideas became offerings. Yet just when he stood crowned with respect, the universe struck again, fired, stripped, and cast into uncertainty. But this time, he did not run. He listened. He walked barefoot through the rain and heard a greater call, India. Amid incense and silence, he would vomit salt water and swallow devotion. He met grief on the ground and let it baptize him into aliveness. For 10 days he sat in stillness, entered his breath as one enters a temple, and emerged with a name remembered from before birth, Ravi, bliss of the sun. Ravi returned transformed, heart a compass, life a ceremony. He taught yoga, met love on the road, followed synchronicity to sacred unions and distant shores. In Thailand, he lost his oldest friend and learned that grief too is holy. A teacher with ash-streaked hands. From death, he wrote life, a book, a mission, a vow. Now, as a father, he stands at the center of a circle he once fled. His son, his first son, Bodhi, named for awakening, is the flame reborn. Proof that lineage of chaos can end in peace. Ravi's work is not to escape his past, but to redeem it. To teach men and dads to feel, to breathe, and to break the cycle with presence, with practice, and with devotion. And when night falls over the mountains and his children sleep, Ravi squints at the stars and watches the light bend, just as he did as a boy in the car, seeing infinite suns in every streetlight. In that shimmer, he remembers. He has always been the bridge, the healer, the one who walks between shadow and dawn. May the flame between worlds burn steady, a living blessing for all who turn wounds into wisdom, fractures into light, and lineage into love. I declare that I am the author of my own story. And moving forward from here, I take responsibility for being the one who holds the pen. Thank you for listening. Gonna breathe some space into that and let my story emanate out as part of the collective. Our stories are very personal. And most of us will go through life holding on to our story. It lives within, and maybe at the end of our life, we'll have an obituary, a couple sentences that somebody else writes to encapsulate the life that we lived and what we stood for. But what can happen when we take our very personal story, when we name it, when we claim it, when we externalize it and are bared witness, owning our story, sharing our story becomes part of the collective narrative. It's still very personal, but now it becomes transpersonal. And the wisdom and the medicine that lives in every line of our story becomes wisdom and medicine for somebody else who's maybe hearing it for the first time and tapping deeper into that sense of connection with their own story. So that's my invitation to you, is to create the space in whatever fashion and function that looks like for you, to really slow down enough that you can create the space. Be one of the rare human beings that chooses to own their story, so that you can wield the pen of your life and be the author and really claim what you want to experience in this lifetime. If the way that I am approaching story is inspiring to you, reach out. My email, one peacefulpapa@gmail.com is a great way to reach out. I'd love to hear your story. I'd love to continue to create spaces where it's safe for men and for dads to share their story, to own their story, because your narrative really matters. And there's this place of us that might feel unworthy, like, my story doesn't matter, or nobody would care. And I'm here to tell you that the opposite is true. That a lot of people would care. A lot of people are craving, whether consciously or unconsciously, they are craving a deeper knowing of who you are. So whether it's starting to open up and share with your spouse or your partner, or finding moments of connection with your kids and sharing them just deeper parts of yourself, being a dad with depth and with character and texture and owning your story is it's such a gift. And so I'll put a bow on this for now. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for taking the time to tune in and to get curious with your story. And I look forward to hearing the rest of the story. Signing off for today, the Peaceful Papa. Thanks for being here. Take care. You've been listening to the Peaceful Papa podcast. May the wisdom you found here ripple into your being, your family, your community, and the world at large. I look forward to being with you again soon. See you on the next episode.